Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, on to the Senate. Texas House Republicans approve redistricting maps, giving the party 5 more seats in the midterms. Democrats powerless to block that vote. California expected to deliver its own counterpunch tomorrow. The Golden State's lieutenant governor joins us here. Evacuations underway for thousands in the Carolinas. Beaches closed along the East Coast. Dangerous rip currents and towering 20-foot waves. That massive hurricane only getting bigger.
I'm Victor Oquendo in the Outer Banks, where the wind is starting to pick up, as is that dangerous surf there behind us, and conditions only expected to deteriorate in the coming hours.
A fighter jet crashes off the coast of Virginia. The Navy pilot ejecting, floating in choppy seas for nearly 90 minutes. Ever boarded a plane to find out that window seat you bought didn't have a window? Angry passengers are claiming that's what happened to them in 2 class action lawsuits against Delta and United Airlines. Senator Amy Klobuchar fighting for legislation against harmful AI, then finding out she's become a deep fake target herself. She joins us to tell us how she fought back and what she's doing now to try to stop it from happening to anyone else.
Sunday, Monday, happy days.
And he's a national treasure, and he's here with us tonight. More than 50 years after he first appeared as Richie Cunningham, Oscar winner Ron Howard is right here to talk about his new movie.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
And good evening to you. I'm Gio Benitez. It is good to see you. We're going to begin here with news out of Texas, where House Republicans have passed the GOP plan to redraw the state's congressional map, giving Republicans 5 more seats in the House. And now it goes to the Texas Senate. Here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent John Carl with the breaking news.
More than 2 weeks after dozens of Democrats left Texas, stalling a vote on the controversial new congressional maps favoring Republicans,
88 ayes and 52 nays, House Bill 4 is finally passed.
the bill passed the state's House of Representatives. The new maps, which were drawn at the request of President Trump, are designed to turn 5 congressional districts that are now held by Democrats into districts that will likely be won by Republicans in next year's midterm elections. Democrats were so outraged by the move, they had left the state to deny the quorum needed to have the vote. Many of those Democrats returned to Texas on Monday and learned they couldn't leave the state capitol unless they signed a document agreeing to have a police escort to ensure that they would return for today's session. Democratic State Representative Nicole Collier refused, forced to spend 2 nights locked in the Capitol building.
Well, they're trying to harm people of color with these rigged maps. The fight is personal to me, and I'm going to fight with every fiber in my body.
Now Democrats in California are vowing to retaliate, moving forward with a plan to redraw its maps, an effort that could cost Republicans there 5 congressional seats.
Yes, we'll fight fire with fire. Yes, we will push back. It's not about whether we play hardball anymore. It's about how we play hardball.
And John Carl joins us now from Washington. And John, the margin in the House is just so tight. So the stakes, they are very, very high. What other states could be next here?
We could see a nationwide effort here. In fact, we're seeing it, Gio, to try to squeeze, the parties trying to squeeze whatever they can out of the states they control. So obviously you have Texas, California, but you have Republicans in Indiana, in Florida, also looking at possible plans to redistrict in those states. Democrats also looking at the possibility of doing the same thing in Maryland. So we are seeing an effort wherever the parties can get whatever advantage they can find, even 1 or 2 seats. They know that those seats could be determining who controls Congress after the midterm elections next year.
Very high stakes. John Carl, I know you'll be watching it all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gio.
And as you just heard here, Democrats in California are now sprinting to redraw their own state congressional maps in their favor to counteract the Texas gerrymander. Governor Gavin Newsom says that the maps would be temporary and subject to voter approval. So let's get the status now of this fight from California's Lieutenant Governor, Eleni Kounalakis. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us here. Let's get right to it, because in your view, how is the redistricting effort in California different from what Republicans are doing in Texas?
Well, it's very different, Gio, and thank you for having me on to talk about this. This has been going on in the country for quite some time. For the last 20 years in California, We have had independent districts drawn with an independent committee. But across the country, we've seen gerrymandering by the Republicans just getting worse and worse. In fact, our members of Congress have tried to introduce the California system to Washington as a fair system for the country. But what's happening right now in Texas with Trump calling and basically saying, find me more congressional seats, it's really just the last straw. And so the people of California, the legislature, the governor are really just fighting back and saying enough is enough. We need to do our part to make sure that we have fair representation in Washington. And this is really the only way that we can do it.
So I know we're expecting a vote tomorrow. What happens next in the process here?
Well, again, President Obama just endorsed the effort because he said, look, this is actually really a measured approach. The commission will stay intact, but for the next 3 election cycles, the maps that will be used will be ones that go to the voters on November 4th. So if voters approve those maps, they'll be used for 3 election cycles. And frankly, hopefully, this crisis in American democracy that is led by Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, hopefully we will have overcome it by then and we can go back to the independent districts and the commission that has served our state so well. So it's temporary, it's fair, it's transparent, but at the same time, it addresses what's really happening, which is Donald Trump trying to suck up all the power of this country into his hands to do what he wants with it, to take away women's rights, to take away people's health care, to go door to door sending ICE agents to tear families apart. Californians do not like what this administration is doing. And so we believe that this is the appropriate thing to do. We put it before the voters. If they want to take their power back again and fight back against Donald Trump, this is their chance.
So you just mentioned there former President Barack Obama's support, and at a fundraising event last night, he did call Governor Newsom's approach responsible to combat the redistricting in Texas, even though he said his preference would be, quote, that we don't have political gerrymandering. Do you agree?
Absolutely, we agree. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren has been bringing this before Congress members now for years, saying, here's the California model. It's fair. Let's do this across the country. But what we know is that in a lot of these red states, they've been gerrymandering away Democratic seats for a very long time. And so what happens is the voice of Americans is not heard in the proportions that it should be because of the Republican gerrymandering. So we're willing to fight back. We're doing it, linking arms with Californians across the state. It will be up to California voters ultimately to decide if we do this. And as President Obama said, if we can get the California standard everywhere, that is absolutely the best solution. But what MAGA has been trying to do now for really a generation is have majority power with minority votes. And that's really what this fight is all about.
This is an issue that so many across the country are talking about right now. Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis from the Golden State, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And next tonight, hear haunting testimony from the families of girls killed in that horrific flood disaster at Camp Mystic in Texas. Heartbroken parents making an emotional plea to lawmakers today. And ABC's Mireya Villarreal was right there.
Tonight, anguish and heartbreak pouring out from parents who lost their daughters in the Camp Mystic flooding.
This loss is one no parent should have to endure.
27 campers and counselors killed as the waters rose on July 4th, among them 9-year-old Janie Hunt.
She left for camp full of excitement and joy. She came home in a plywood box.
More than a dozen parents testifying before the Texas Senate, frustrated by the preventable tragedy.
Camp is supposed to be a safe place.
Protocols that should have been in place were ignored. As a result, my daughter was stolen from us.
Cece Stewart speaking through tears, her 9-year-old daughter Seal still missing.
48 days later, Seal remains somewhere in the devastation of the Guadalupe River. We wait, trapped in agony, until she is brought home.
The families calling for change, pushing to pass a bill that will improve safety requirements for camps.
It is the start of a promise that their lives and their deaths will mean change.
State senators equally emotional.
This tragedy is going to impact future lives.
Promising to work with House representatives to pass a bipartisan bill.
There's a responsibility on all of us, and I hope people will hold government to account. Those 8-year-old little girls stuck in a cabin because the adults around them failed.
Just so tragic. Medea, thank you for your reporting. Meanwhile, Hurricane Erin is bringing life-threatening rip currents, destructive waves, and coastal flooding from the Carolinas all the way to the Northeast. The outer bands of this Category 2 storm are now hitting North Carolina's Outer Banks. Look at the size of that right there. Just as some areas there reach high tide, the massive hurricane is more than 700 miles wide. We're going to have the latest storm track here and forecast in just a moment. But first, let's get to ABC's Victor Okendo, who's leading us off from North Carolina here.
Tonight, conditions deteriorating all along the East Coast as massive Hurricane Erin turns closer and closer to shore. On North Carolina's fragile Outer Banks, waves and powerful storm surge crashing ashore, threatening homes. Many, but not all, heeding the warning to get out.
If you are under an evacuation order, take action now before it's too late.
Homeowners holding their breath.
We do have a number of threatened oceanfront structures. These are houses that no longer have a protective dune in front of them. They're very vulnerable to the waves, to the high surf.
North Carolina's governor pre-positioning swift water rescue teams and National Guard troops, begging drivers to stay out of flooded roadways.
Don't do it. You do not know how deep the water is or how fast it is running.
Erin more than 700 miles wide, so massive there are tropical storm alerts on both sides of it as it threads the needle between the U.S. and Bermuda. The warnings extending to the Jersey Shore. Atlantic City authorities warning beachgoers not to go in past their ankles. WABC's Anthony Johnson is in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey.
Nobody is allowed onto the beach. As a matter of fact, there are gates to block people from actually walking out on the sand. There are no lifeguards, red flag warnings everywhere along the Jersey Shore.
Rip current dangers from Florida to New York's Long Island. New York City banning swimming at all beaches.
And let's get right to meteorologist Brittany Bell now of our New York station WABC. And Brittany, we've been talking about the size of this storm. What are you seeing right now with Erin's latest track?
And that's the key, Gio. So even though Erin, the intensity hasn't changed too much, it will gradually get stronger over the next few days. But the bigger story is that this hurricane will continue to get larger and larger, sending widespread impacts all along the eastern seaboard. So I want to show you some of the latest alerts. It's going to pass just offshore of North Carolina, but still close enough, and due to the large size, prompting tropical storm warnings for the Outer Banks, even for coastal sections of Virginia, even coastal flood alerts as far north as the Jersey Shore and coastal sections of Connecticut. And life-threatening rip currents continue. Just to put things in perspective, that threat spans from just north of Miami as far north as Cape Cod, and that risk could stay elevated lasting through at least Friday. So that's why a lot of these beaches are closed and you're advised to stay out of the water. On top of that, now dangerous waves bearing down, taking aim at the North Carolina Outer Banks late tonight that could approach 10 to 20 feet, and then next hitting the northeast, stretching from the Jersey Shore all the way towards the east end of Long Island, approaching 8 to 15 feet. So waves remain elevated on Friday, gradually tapering off as we head into this weekend. Gio?
We are now very much into hurricane season. Brittany Bell, thank you so much. And next tonight here, with Hurricane Erin stirring up the Atlantic, the U.S. Navy racing to rescue a fighter pilot who crashed into the ocean off Norfolk, Virginia. An F/A-18 Super Hornet going down during a training flight. The pilot ejecting, floating in choppy seas for nearly 90 minutes. Let's get right to ABC's Mola Lenghi now. Mola.
Well, yeah, Gio, after safely ejecting from that jet, that Navy pilot in those waters for about 90 minutes before finally being rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard. And remember, those Atlantic waters are pretty rough right now with Hurricane Erin out there brewing and churning. A Navy spokesperson tells ABC that the pilot took off from a naval base in the Norfolk, Virginia area this morning on a routine training mission when that pilot ejected from that Super Hornet fighter jet. We're told dozens of miles off the Virginia coast, sending the plane crashing into the Atlantic, where it remains tonight. Meanwhile, that pilot is undergoing a medical evaluation tonight, and that incident is being investigated, Gio.
All right, Mololengi, thank you so much. And we are going to turn now to an updated timeline on Kilmar Abrego Garcia. His lawyers have asked a federal judge to dismiss human smuggling charges. Abrego Garcia's attorneys said that senior cabinet members, DOJ leaders, and President Trump have mounted ongoing public attacks on the Salvadorian native, arguing that any prosecution is, quote, vindictive. Abrego Garcia could be released from Tennessee criminal custody on Friday when U.S. Magistrate Judge Barbara Holmes's temporary stay is set to expire. So we will be watching that, of course. We are going to move now to a deadly home explosion in Virginia. A woman killed in the blast and a man now fighting for his life. The house was completely leveled, we're told. A dozen homes in the neighborhood damaged by the flying debris. Here's ABC's Ike Ajachi.
Crews in Virginia are sifting through piles of debris tonight, investigating how a home exploded in this neighborhood near Charlottesville.
It appears we've got one house flattened on the ground. We've got debris field for over a block.
Calls pouring into 911.
Right now, we're getting inundated with phone calls.
At least one person killed and another injured by the violent explosion. This incident comes as police in North Carolina are picking up the pieces from a separate explosion. Debris raining down and thick black smoke rising above Wilmington. 3 firefighters trapped inside. Police say 46-year-old Jason Lee Beach, now charged with felony DWI and fleeing the scene, is responsible for the blast after he crashed his vehicle into that building, striking a gas line.
Geo, investigators in Virginia are zeroing in on a possible gas leak behind the home explosion, with state fire marshals expected on scene tomorrow. Geo?
Okay, Ike, thank you so much for that. And we're going to go overseas now. Israel's attack on Gaza City is underway in an attempt to take control of the city, forcing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in dire need of food to evacuate yet again. Here's ABC's chief international correspondent, James Longman.
The Israeli military has tonight started its operation to occupy Gaza City, calling up 60,000 reservists, saying Israeli forces are already on its outskirts. Recent satellite images appear to show military vehicles positioning nearby. Humanitarian organizations sounding the alarm, saying the catastrophic situation for the people of Gaza will only worsen. Starvation has gripped Gaza for months, with scores of Palestinians dying just trying to get to aid. Hamas says more than 62,000 people have now been killed. Hundreds of thousands took refuge in Gaza City. They are now being forced to move again. Satellite images show tent encampment on August 7th. 10 days later, those tents largely gone. Most of Europe and many in his own country against Prime Minister Netanyahu's plan, but he does have President Trump's support. Trump called him a war hero and declared himself one too for deciding to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities.
Bibi is a good man. He's in there fighting. He's a war hero because we work together. He's a war hero. I guess I am too. Nobody cares, but I am too.
Gio, this could still be a pressure tactic by Israel to force the release of the remaining 50 hostages. Hamas has had a positive response to a plan which would see some of them freed, but Israel is now pushing for better terms. Gio?
All right, James Longman, thank you so much. And from that conflict, we now go to the one between Russia and Ukraine. Tonight, as President Trump tries to broker a peace deal to end that war in Ukraine, Russia appears to be downplaying the prospects of a summit between Presidents Putin and Zelensky anytime soon. Russia's foreign minister said today that while Russia is ready to negotiate, any meeting with Ukraine should not be rushed. He also stressed that the process must be prepared in the most thorough way and said that Russia must be included in any talks about guaranteeing Ukraine security. Let's go ahead and bring in former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Stephen Pfeiffer. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us here. We appreciate it. What do you make of that Russia will not accept security guarantees without being a part of that discussion, saying that any talks without their involvement are on a, quote, road to nowhere?
Well, let's be clear. The security guarantees are going to be between Western countries and Ukraine. And there's security guarantees for Ukraine against Russia. Now, I understand that Foreign Minister Lavrov would like to have Russia involved, but here's the kind of proposals the Russians have. Back in 2022, Russia said, yes, there should be countries that guarantee Ukraine's security, and we, Russia, will be one of them. Then the Russians also said, of course, the guarantors cannot act unless all guarantors agree. So Russia was carving out itself the right to veto any action, which would have allowed Russia to invade Ukraine and then veto the other guarantors from acting. So there's not much hope in a plan that involves the Russians in security guarantees for Ukraine, and the Ukrainians are not going to be very interested in that.
Well, and that begs the question, Ambassador, in an effort to make peace, where does Ukrainian President Zelensky go from here?
Well, I think this really is a question now that in part depends on the United States. Is right now, I think Vladimir Putin unfortunately still believes he can achieve his military goals on the battlefield. What we have to do is find a way to disabuse him of that. And this would be if President Trump would play some cards. He has cards which he has not put down, not only to tighten the economic pressure on Russia, but also to do things that would make clear that Ukraine will have the resources. You could, for example, move to seize Russian frozen central bank assets and make it clear to Putin and the Kremlin that Ukraine's going to have the resources and the money to buy all the weapons it needs to defend itself for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. At that point, Putin has to ask himself, can I win this? And are the costs going to become too high? But unfortunately, for reasons that I quite frankly do not understand, Mr. Trump has been reluctant to play those cards.
Are we closer to peace now than this time last week?
We're, I think, in a better position than we were after the debacle in Alaska, where, again, Mr. Trump accepted a Russian proposal that he and the people with him should have known would be totally unacceptable to Ukraine. I think some of that ground was recovered on Monday, and you now have a conversation going on between the United States and Europeans about security guarantees, and you've now had the pressure put on the Russians to respond to what Mr. Trump thought was an agreement, that there would now be a bilateral between Putin and Ukrainian President Zelensky. And it now looks like the Russians are beginning to back and hem and haw on that as well.
If you were advising President Trump right now, what would you tell him?
I think you've got to crank up the pressure on Moscow. You've got to work with the Europeans so there are firm security guarantees for Ukraine, because that's really going to be a prerequisite for what the Ukrainians might do later on. It's really, though, it's time to be tough with Putin. And Putin has to be confronted with the fact that if he continues the war, he's not going to win on the ground, and his cost, political, economic, and military, are only going to increase.
All right. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Stephen Pifer, thank you so much for being here. A significant issue for sure, and no end in sight just yet. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, a federal judge has ruled that Texas cannot require public schools in Austin, Houston, and other school districts to display the Ten Commandments. The bill was set to take into effect September 1st. The court's ruling stated that the bill violated the Establishment and Free Exercise clauses of the First Amendment. Texas is now the third state to have blocked recent laws to display the Ten Commandments in schools, Louisiana and Arkansas being the other two states. Meanwhile, an alarming close call leads to a heroic rescue as a mother acts fast to save her 1-year-old baby after their vehicle went into the water. Police there in Wisconsin released security camera footage showing a woman accidentally driving her car into the water there near the marina. The woman quickly reacted to free her child, who was secured in a car seat, as bystanders sprinted to help in the rescue effort. Police said that a preliminary investigation shows that the cause of the accident was, quote, confusion in vehicle control. Unbelievable. All right, coming up here, a boat capsizes, leaving a man stranded in the water. See the daring Coast Guard rescue off the coast of Texas. And how do you feel about buying a window seat without a window? Well, the question is leading to lawsuits against two major airlines. We're going to break down the yearly billion-dollar business by the numbers. But next, right here, Senator Klobuchar joins us, warning the public about the dangers of deep fakes. You've been seeing it all online. The clip that went viral of her that sparked it all. We'll be right back. You're watching Prime on ABC News Live. And next tonight, to the rise of so-called deep fakes and what a group of bipartisan senators are doing to try to prevent them. Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota published an op-ed today in the New York Times titled, "What I Didn't Say About Sydney Sweeney." She's been advocating for legislation to protect Americans from harmful AI and recently found out she was a target herself when a deep fake was posted of her saying salacious things about that ad campaign. And Senator Amy Klobuchar joins us live right now. Senator Klobuchar, everyone seems to be talking about this, and this is one issue really that in this divided time, it does appear to transcend politics. So you had a hearing a few weeks ago, and soon after that, you see this clip of you going viral online. Then you realize it was a deep fake. So what's the rest of that story?
Well, thanks so much, Gio. And what happened here is Senator Marsha Blackburn, pretty conservative Republican from Tennessee, she and I together do this hearing, and it couldn't have gone better. We're talking about a national privacy bill. We're talking about protecting people in this day of AI. A day later, this goes completely viral. And I think what happened in that hearing that was that exciting, and I realized they have made a video that really, it's me, it's my staff behind me. I am saying words that were not the words I said in very vulgar manner, and it goes over 1 million views. And it took me days to try to, 2 platforms, one took it down, one labeled it AI, but the other X would not do anything except suggested I get community notes. And it made me realize again that for regular people, this is nearly impossible, and we're going to see more and more of these fake AI created deep fakes that really look like the person, and you think it's a person, and you can't tell if it is or not, and there's no way to find out. We are literally doing nothing right now to police this.
I mean, Senator, it is unbelievable. You know, just yesterday I was watching these videos online, and before the videos played, 2 of them, I see these deep fakes. And it's serious because you're talking about well-known people who people trust, and these deep fakes are talking about medical issues and, you know, encouraging people to take certain things that haven't been tested. And I guess the bottom line here is if a video like that, or if any of us gets altered and it gets posted online, as things currently stand right now, there is no legal mechanism to force companies to take it down?
It's a literal nightmare. You've had a principal that was actually removed from his job, suspended, and it turned out it was a fake video. You've had Marco Rubio's voice used several times where he was contacting, say, heads of foreign ministers or contacting a member of Congress or a governor. And they didn't know it wasn't him. Or you can imagine what could happen. You could have a bank CEO causing a bank run. You could have a influencer telling kids to use drugs, but it wasn't really them. And so that's why other countries are starting to put rules of the road in place within the parameters of our right to free speech. Not all speech is protected. You can't falsely yell fire in a crowded movie theater. That's not protected. Pornography of kids, it's not protected. And that's why in certain spaces we can move and just tell them, you have to take this down. In others, which might be parody, making fun of things, if it's a fake video and it's substantially AI created, at least you should have a label on it so that people know if it's their elected official or not. That's what's happening in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, the label, I don't see an issue with that at all. What do you think the average American doesn't understand about deepfakes?
I think at first they think, oh, it's fun. It's a dog video or a cat video, and they made the dog do funny things and all that. But then imagine if it happens to you. Imagine if it's your mom or dad, and this happened to one of my employees. Their son is serving in the Marines, and a call was made with his voice asking for help, asking for money. And they knew that this wasn't right because they weren't supposed to know where he was deployed, all these things. But the grandma and grandpa, they might be victim of the scam. So these things can result in scams. It sounds like your loved one's face or your loved one's videos. These things can result in a democracy where people don't know, did the elected official really say that or not?
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you are taking this on in a bipartisan way. It is such a critical issue. Okay, so you also are a sitting senator. So can we talk politics for a second here? You've described yourself as Minnesota nice, and we saw that just today, Texas Republicans moved to pass those new congressional maps. Democrats all the way up to Barack Obama, they're calling for California's plan to redistrict in response a responsible approach. So in this situation, are Democrats past playing nice, and should he respond with redistricting of your own?
First of all, this is inevitable if Texas and Donald Trump are going to treat our democracy like this. In the old days, if a party was having trouble, they either changed their policies, they changed their candidates. He's literally trying to change who gets the vote. I have long led the bill, the Freedom to Vote Act, that would actually ban this kind of thing that happened in Texas. And the Supreme Court has said that it would be allowed to pass something like this. So that's what I think the answer would be. But in the meantime, Democrats just can't unilaterally step down and let these guys run the tables in the way that they are doing right now, which isn't fair for our democracy.
All right, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, thank you so much for joining us here on ABC News Live Prime.
Great to be on. Thank you.
And coming up here, settling on a remote island without the noise of the city. That may sound nice, but it's a recipe for betrayal in a new film. Director Ron Howard, the legend, he's going to tell us about his movie Eden. He is right here in studio. And a once beloved company is no longer closing all of its doors. What could a private equity buyout mean for bankrupt retailer Claire's? Stick around here on Prime. Delta and United Airlines are both facing class action lawsuits accused of selling window seats without windows. So as flyers take their complaints to court, let's break down the billions of dollars airlines are making every year in tonight's By the Numbers. $6.7 billion in net profit. That's how much U.S. airlines made last year, according to the Bureau of Transportation. Mind you, that's a $1.1 billion drop compared to the year before. And if you look at the total operating revenue, the cost of airfare last year made up the biggest chunk of profit for the airlines to the tune of $185 billion. Just over $7 billion came from baggage fees, and reservation change fees generated roughly $1 billion. So you might be wondering, just how much does an airline profit from you every time you fly? Well, according to the International Air Transport Association, that would be roughly $11. So let's bring in someone worth more than $11. ABC's Sam Sweeney, who covers all things transportation, including this one. Sam, let's talk about these class action lawsuits over windowless window seats. Break down these separate lawsuits for us here.
So these plaintiffs are saying they spent a lot of time, a lot of money picking out an airline seat. They wanted window seats. They paid extra for those window seats. But then when they got on the plane, their actual seat didn't have a window. It was just a wall. Sometimes the seats don't quite align with the windows themselves because there's certain parts of the plane that have air conditioning ducts or electrical ducts. And they're saying, look, we want our money back. They're also suing for millions of dollars. And now they're trying to do a class action lawsuit.
So you have done some digging into this today, as you always do. Have there been any other lawsuits like this before?
Not quite like this. The airlines are pretty protected. They have what's known as the contract of carriage. And what that says, it's the fine print. And it often says that the airline will get you to your destination. They don't say when they're going to get you, how they're going to get you to the destination. They just say they will, or they'll give you their money back. So this really comes down to, what is a window seat? Is it a location on the plane? You're not getting a middle seat. You're not getting an aisle seat. Perhaps they might say, look, these people paid to be closer to the front of the plane and on that side of the plane. So they did get their extra legroom and maybe they got a free drink, but they didn't get the window itself. But one of the plaintiffs says that she was claustrophobic and she wanted that window, and that's why she paid extra. So there's a chance that this could be deflected from the courts to the Department of Transportation because they may have say over this. We really have to see. They're seeking millions of dollars. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe that the airlines are quite protected. And you can bet that United and Delta will likely change the verbiage on their websites and tell customers that they may not actually have a physical window, but a wall next to them, like American Airlines does and Alaskan Airlines does. But the chances of these people getting millions of dollars, quite slim.
Yeah, you're not a lawyer, but you do know these airlines. And if someone is watching this right now and they say, hey, I paid for a window seat before and I didn't get a window, given that these are class action lawsuits, what should they do?
The lawyers are listed at the bottom of this suit, and you can find that online, and they are asking that people reach out to them, and they can possibly join this if this does in fact become a class action lawsuit and you know, rise to that level.
There is no one I know who's more of an expert as a traveler than you. So what advice would you tell people who really, really, really want that window and they make sure they get it? How do they do it?
If the airlines don't change right away, you can always go onto websites like seatguru.com, and on that website you will type in, you know, where you're going, what plane it's on, and they will actually give you a seat map, and that website will tell you exactly where the galleys are, where the bathrooms are, and if your seat actually has a window.
All right, Sam Sweeney, usually we say thanks for joining us, but how about safe travels? Thank you so much. And coming up here, immigrants who want to live and work in the U.S. will face more scrutiny. What they'll now be asked about, their background, and once a child actor and now a prolific director. Oh yeah, we're talking to Ron Howard about his brand new thriller, and it's a wild one, and how he filmed in very harsh conditions. You'll want to stick around for this. It's next. An airline is letting its passengers vote on its next island destination. American immigrants will now be screened for anti-Americanism, and a very happy birth announcement 100 years in the making. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. Delta Airlines says it will be adding a new destination with the help of its SkyMiles members and employees. The airline announced a route race where members and employees can vote next week for whether Delta should begin flying to Malta, Ibiza, or Sardinia next summer. It's the latest in a series of changes for Delta's loyalty programs, some of which were revised in recent years following backlash over new policies for earning status. Immigration officials say immigrants who want to live and work in the U.S. will now be screened for any involvement in anti-American or terrorist organizations, including those that support and promote anti-Semitism. A specific definition for anti-American wasn't given, but the policy alert from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services referenced a section in the Immigration and Nationality Act that listed instances where someone should be barred from citizenship based on affiliation with communist or totalitarian governments, or even advocating for overthrowing the U.S. government. New video shows Coast Guard officials rescuing a man from a capsized small boat off of Corpus Christi, Texas. The Coast Guard said a helicopter air crew responded after a call reporting a boater's vessel was taking on water in Redfish Bay. The crew lifted the man to safety. The Coast Guard says he was last reported in stable condition. Target CEO is stepping down as sales remain sluggish for the retail giant. The company said Brian Cornell would leave his position early next year after more than a decade leading the company. Chief Operating Officer Michael Fidelki will take over the post. Target has reported flat or declining comparable sales in 9 out of the last 11 quarters. Claire's has agreed to sell part of its North American business after recently filing for bankruptcy. The jewelry retailer said it agreed to a deal with the private holding company Ames Watson for $104 million in cash. The deal will keep at least 795 retail locations open. As part of the deal, which is subject to approval by courts in the U.S. and Canada, Claire's will pause its liquidation process underway at the stores that are being sold, though the process will continue at the rest of its locations. The Philadelphia Zoo welcomes 16 Western Santa Cruz tortoise hatchlings. The babies were born to parents who are both estimated to be 100 years old. It's the first baby for the mother, who herself has been at the zoo for nearly a century, and a big win for the zoo in the fight to preserve the critically endangered tortoise species. Presented here for hopefully another 100 years because her offspring are now part of our collection.
This animal, who's been in Philadelphia since 1932, will be represented here for hopefully another 100 years because her offspring are now part of our collection.
All right, known for his classics like A Beautiful Mind, The Da Vinci Code, Apollo 13, Academy Award-winning director Ron Howard is out with a new film. It's called Eden, and it is a thrilling survival tale based on a true story from the 1930s about European settlers abandoning civilization and settling on a remote island. Now, their adventure, it turns deadly after tensions and betrayal grows. Take a look at this.
I want you off my island. If you don't go by your own free will, I will personally throw you in shackles and drag you off myself.
Shut up! Baroness! Huh? As tempting as it is to be tied up, I must inform you that this is not your island.
Oh, it looks so good, and Ron Howard is right here. Thank you. Welcome to Prime. We appreciate it.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
Oh, congratulations. This is a different kind of movie for you.
Well, it is. I had this idea a long time ago. I encountered this story. It's an infamous story in the Galapagos. I was on vacation there, learned about it, was fascinated by it. This is 15 years ago. I immediately started working on an outline for a movie version, literally thumbing it out on my BlackBerry.
No
gives
kidding.
you an idea how long ago that was. But it's daunting. Tonally, it's very different for me. I love doing movies based on real events, but usually they're a little more of a celebration. But this is a true crime thriller, and it's more of a cautionary tale. And it's violent in places, sexy in places. It's kind of a new territory for me in some ways.
And I love that cautionary tale because part of that tale is that maybe it's not Mother Nature you need to be afraid of, but it's human nature.
This notion that we can run away and it will all be better. I mean, this is a very tumultuous time in Europe for these people, and that's what they were fleeing, onset of fascism and other things. But today, one of the most searched sites is off the grid. It's one of the most searched phrases. So, they were romanticizing the idea then, we are today. But, it does come down to us, who we are, and how well we understand how to get along with other people.
Look, you're Ron Howard, so really we understand why these cast members joined in. But let's just go down the list here because this cast is unbelievable. Jude Law, Sydney Sweeney, Ana de Armas, Daniel Bruhl, Vanessa Kirby. I mean, what did you say to them to bring them on board?
It was the script. And it was also very easy to read the script and do what I hope people do who see the movie in a theater is see it, think about it, and go online. This was not, people weren't getting their big studio salaries. It was just, they wanted to tackle this as a creative challenge, and I was thrilled by what they brought to the movie.
And you probably weren't getting those sound stages either because you wanted to bring this out into an authentic environment.
Not even stages. What stage? We had no stage. We literally were shooting outdoors. This was shot in Australia. We did shoot in the Galapagos, but we couldn't take actors there because it's a preserve. You can't logistically execute a movie there. But we did film a lot of elements, shots, scenes that we could include in the movie. But in Australia, we found a section that was a lot like the Galapagos in that it was sort of like a desert island area, except the Galapagos doesn't have the poisonous snakes and spiders that they happen to have in Australia. And we were bobbing and weaving around those critters, all the time, along with the storms, the 100-degree heat. It was an intense physical experience, very demanding for the actors.
Well, and I like that you understand what it takes to be an actor, because obviously in the studio you were so fantastic. I think we have that there, nominated for an Emmy.
Oh, thank you.
What's interesting about this is that when I watch this, I'm like, is Ron Howard that angry? And I don't think you are.
No, everything about the studio is there's truth underneath it, but everything's heightened. I don't talk to people that way or get physical. But my wife and daughter-in-law were watching this with me when we first looked at it. And they both got to this scene that everybody else thought was hilarious, and they didn't think it was that funny. I think it scared them a little bit that this kind of energy could be lurking under there.
And did it surprise you?
No, it's a great script. I was thrilled. Look, you realize all actors, they love playing a jerk. It's great to play an ass, you know. And so this was that version of me, and I had a field day. I loved it.
Oh, it was so fun to watch. It was so fun to watch. Before you go, Apollo 13. We're hearing that it's going to be re-released in IMAX.
It is, and then and following that will be another kind of broad release of the film. This is the 30th anniversary of the movie. And of course, we just lost the great Jim Lovell.
Yeah, I
who
was just
passed
going to
away.
ask you what your thoughts were.
And but it's it's going to be remarkable to see the film on the big IMAX screens, and I hope audiences really enjoy it.
It's the perfect time to honor his legacy.
It's sad to have lost him, but 97 years old, and what a life well lived.
Well, Ron Howard, you are such a pleasure. Nothing like the version of you in the studio.
No, I'm not going to throw my hat at you, I promise.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. And of course, you can watch Eden in theaters nationwide starting this Friday. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Gio Benitez. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks for streaming with us. Have a good night.